Hey, Andrew Wood here. In my new book, Legendary Advice, I talk a lot about how important it is to meet people, to expand your network of friends, to expand your network of associates, and to talk to people at every opportunity. I mean, these days you can walk into a bar and there'll be 20 people, and every single person at the bar will be sitting there on their cell phone texting somebody, and the whole bar nobody's actually talking to anybody. And I think it's very important that you don't prejudge people when you talk to them. I mean, we cannot judge a book by its cover. And perhaps the most interesting incident that happened to me that really proved this was about 20 years ago. I was on a flight from Dallas to Orange County, California. I was sitting in 1A, and there was a large middle-aged lady sitting next to me in 1B. And in her bag, she had a very big bag, she had a copy of the National Enquirer, the Star, and the Sun. So I kind of looked at this lady, and I kind of looked at the bag and looked at the magazines, and I just couldn't think what I would say to her. So I just kind of buried myself in my book, and I didn't talk to her. But halfway through the flight, she got up and asked me to move so that she could go to the restroom. And I said something pleasant to her. She said something pleasant to me. And when she sat back down, she looked me right in the eye and she said, "You know, you weren't going to talk to me, were you? Just because I'm a fat middle-aged lady and I'm reading the National Enquirer, you don't think I have anything interesting to say, do you?" And I'm thinking, wow, did she nail that? And so there was no point arguing. I'm like, yeah, that was pretty much it. She goes, "I'm a very interesting person, and I'm sure you are too." She goes, "What do you do?" Well, at the time, I was running my little mini karate empire, but I just published my first book, and I was very proud of it. It was called Making It Big in America. And so I said, "I'm an author." She goes, "Oh, that's very interesting. What type of books do you write?" And I said, "Well, I've written kind of a self-development book called Making It Big in America." She goes, "Great." She goes, "How's it doing?" I go, "I think it's doing pretty well. It's sold 5,000 copies already." And she goes, "Oh, that's great." I said, "What do you do?" She goes, "Well, I'm an author too." I go, "Really? How's your book doing?" She goes, "Oh yeah, it's doing pretty good. I just came from a book signing in Dallas, and we've sold 260,000 books. Talk about getting smoked." I said, "Well, what type of books do you write?" She says, "I do true crime." I said, "Well, how do you get into writing true crime?" She said, "Well, a few years ago, my husband left me. I had some small kids. I was feeling a little depressed. I was kind of the housewife. I didn't really know what I was going to do. And a friend suggested that I volunteer to help some other people to kind of get me over a little bit of this depressing time. So I volunteered for the suicide hotline in Seattle, where I live. And as you may or may not know, Seattle is the suicide capital of America, I guess because the weather's like England. But she volunteered for the suicide hotline and tried to help some other people to make her feel better about what was going on in her life. Well, the first couple of months she volunteered there, 2 or 3 of the volunteers killed themselves. And so the organizers of this program decided that they needed to team people up and to team them up so that they stayed motivated and, that way these people could help each other. So her teammate on the suicide hotline was Theodore Bundy, America's most notorious serial killer. And that's how she got into true crime. So that's a pretty amazing story, and it's a story that I always tell when I want to remind myself or my audience that you should never judge a book by its cover, and that there's a lot of interesting people out there if you will only take the time to ask them what they do and how they got started, and you can learn a lot from anybody if you just get them talking.